Okay, let's start. Welcome to this first discussion class on Group Financial Reporting, FAC 3704. I'll be the presenter. My name is Andre Stein, and I'll say something about myself in the next slide or two. Just so that you know, this class will be recorded. So at any point in time after the class, you're more than welcome to visit my modules, and you will find the recording. If it's not tomorrow, then by Monday you'll find it under discussion classes. I will open up a new tab there, discussion classes 2025. And then one other thing, whenever you listen to the recordings or after this class, if you can just give me feedback via email to tell me what you think of the class and what you would like me to do differently in the classes to come. Okay, on the left-hand side, you'll see the module email address. So this is the address that I want you to use for any communication with me. It's fac3704@unisa.ac.za. It just makes it easier if you use only that email address, because then I know that is emails from students. And I set there on top in red, preferred method of communication. And I also say we respond within 24 hours. We used to be more than one lecturer on this module. I'm the only one at the moment. So I will definitely answer within 24 hours, any mails, except over weekends. Normally closer to the exams. If I see there is a crisis, then I'll respond over the weekends as well. So on the right-hand side, that's me, Andre Stein. I'm currently the module leader and only lecturer on this module. And I hope you enjoy this module. A lot of students tend to think this is a difficult module, but throughout my classes, I will show you that if you really know the basic principles, it is not difficult. This is just an administrative page. So I said to you just now, I gave you my email address. This is obviously the email address if you need clarity on some of the content on the module or on the assignments or on the examinations. Any other information that you need, please have a look at this slide, and you're more than welcome to contact the respective departments. Okay, just a few ground rules. I've muted your camera. I've muted your microphone. You're more than welcome if you really need to raise your hand and ask a question during the discussion, but I would prefer if you ask any questions at the end via email. That will make it better for me, and I think for you as well, because then you can always refer back to the questions that you've asked. It just makes it easier for the other people who set time aside to watch this recording or this class, and as the same for people who can't attend now, but watch the videos at a later stage. Okay, I'm going to show you, I'm going to deal today with Learning Unit 1 and Learning Unit 2. Learning Unit 1 and Learning Unit 2 is the two learning units that you need to know to do the assignment. That will open Friday night at 11, and then it's open for the whole weekend. Just check the announcement, exactly the date and times that it's open. But I'm sure the things that I will discuss now will help you a lot. Just bear in mind, I'm going to go into a bit more detail, and let's call it, show you a few more technical stuff that you will not need for assignment 1 specifically, because assignment 1 consists of only 20 multiple choice questions. But don't get too excited. It's not always the case that when you get a multiple choice question, it's necessarily very easy. So there's gonna be a few things, and the questions I've set up is 3 categories, and there's one category that's quite a few easy, simple questions, and then the others are a case study or a scenario with a few questions on that specific scenario. But you'll see that, let's call it by Friday evening or Saturday morning. So in my mind, there's 7 steps that you need to do to be able to pass this module. So the first one is start early, okay? And I hope this is not the first day that you are going to spend some time on this module, because I haven't received a lot of emails this far, only a few emails that I've received so far. So I really want to encourage you to start, and this is the study program that you will also find in Tutorial Letter 101. I didn't put the exact weeks here on this slide. You can go have a look at that in Tutorial Letter 101. So I just want you to make sure that you go through all these, let's call it, areas in the study program that's set aside. So some of you might already started a long time ago, and maybe you're already at week 5 to 6 or whatever the case may be. For those of you who haven't started, obviously you need to start to be able to do assignment 1, which covers learning unit or consists out of learning unit 1 and 2. But I want you to then, if you haven't started yet, to please start as soon as possible. The due dates, just look there on the right hand side. The due dates always refer to the announcements. I've posted announcements, I think it was in last week or the week before that, and a couple of days after that I received emails from students saying, but I can't access the assignment, or when is the due date, blah blah blah. And that just tells me you guys don't read the announcement. So please log on to my modules, to the FAC 3704 module site, and please have a look at the announcements there. Okay, so know your terminology. Remember I said 7 steps. So the first step obviously is to start. The second one is to know your terminology and the basics. If you know the basics, you can answer any type of question. The multiple choice questions of assignment 1, the longer question that will be in assignment 2, and even the exam questions. Okay, so please make sure you understand the basics, and if there's at any point something that you struggle with, please contact me via email. Okay, then practice regularly. So I've got 3 points there. Examples from your study guide. So obviously if you read through the study guide, which is Tutorial Letter 501, you will see small examples. So we in most of the cases explain a principle, and then after the principle there's a small little example. So you need to make sure that the majority of those small examples you do understand, because if you do not understand the small example where only limited information is given, you will struggle when all that information is provided in a question, in a case study. So make sure the small examples you understand, and if not, let me know. Then Tutorial Letter 102, that's easier questions, smaller questions. That's almost like your assignment 2 type of questions. So once you're done with the work in the study guide and the discussion classes, work through questions in Tutorial Letter 102. After that, Tutorial Letter 103, that's basically old exam questions, okay? And I must say, so don't get too stressed out when you struggle with some of the principles in these questions, because I think it's really good questions who covered a lot of things. And I think there's in these questions a few difficult things that you might struggle with. But the majority of the information in the questions will be on exam standard. And if you just know that, you will easily pass this module. So practice regularly. That's the 3 things. Learn from your mistakes. So when you do questions from Tutorial Letter 102 or 103, do the questions as if you're sitting in an exam. Don't look at our solution, because those study guides, we provide questions for you, and we also provide the suggested solutions, and even with commentary at some of the places. Make sure you do the question as if you sit in the exam without looking at our answers. Then after that you mark yourself, and you then see what mistakes you've made. And if you can't figure out the mistake that you've made by yourself, then you contact me. Okay, so that we can make sure you don't, in the questions to come, make similar mistakes over again. So learn from your mistakes. Ask if something's not clear. I think I've said that many times. Sometimes it's easy to start doing the questions or look at the question and look at the answer and it feels simple. And then suddenly when you do an assignment or maybe do an integrated question, you struggle with a concept and then you start to stress. Don't stress. As I said to you in tutorial letter 103, there are a few, let's call it complex thing in the questions. That's really more difficult questions that you can almost expect in the exam. So if you can do the majority of the things in the questions provided, you will be fine. But anyway, ask if something's not clear. Get a good year mark. So I think already it's a good start for those of you who joined this discussion to be here. Hopefully you've studied on your own as well, because for me, I think that's a very important step in passing this module and other modules, is to first make your own hands dirty. So go through the material that's provided on my modules, the recordings that's given, and so forth. Okay, and then to prepare for your first assignment. So by now I hope you should know that your final mark consists of your year mark, which counts 45%, plus the exam mark will be 55%. That two together is going to give you your final mark, and your year mark is 15% for assignment 1 and 30% for assignment 2. So you can, just by looking at this, can see the better you do in the assignments, obviously the easier it will be for you to pass this module. Okay, but just look at the bottom sentence there. You still need to get a 40% minimum in the examination to pass the module. Okay, so you can't get 100% for your assignment 1 and 2 and then think if you get 5% in the exam you will pass. You will not pass. You need 40%. Okay, but it's going to be a good building block if you've got a good year mark, because obviously if you can get for the assignments, let's call it a 60, 70, or even more than that. Obviously that will differ from student to student. It will just be much easier to pass the final exam. Okay, 7, pass the exam. Obviously, as I said, make sure you get a sub minimum of 40%, and your goal should not be to get the 40, because if you're going to aim for 40 and you, for whatever reason, get a 38, you will not pass the module. So aim high, but if you work throughout the semester, you will definitely pass the exam. And if you look at my classes and you understand what I explain in the classes, and you really follow what I'm saying in the classes, you must just bear in mind this class is going to be 2 hours. Okay, so there's some of the things in my slides that I'm really going to quickly jump over. Okay, you must come back. I'll put the recording and the slides on my modules tomorrow, otherwise latest Monday. And make sure you work through the other examples as well. Okay, because the detailed examples that I will not go through in detail today, I really think it's important, and I really think my slides explain the principles well. Okay. All right. Announcements. For me, that's very important. Sorry, that was now the last one of the 7 points that I said you need to focus on. Announcements. It's very important. I realize students are not always looking at the announcements that we send out. So please make sure you go to the announcements on a regular basis and read through the announcements. You'll see there I've got a short video there as well of the consolidation process. Over the next weeks, I will add a few short videos. Please give me feedback on those as well. Okay, some of these short videos, actually most of them was not recorded by myself. So it's videos that we've used in the past that was recorded by other lecturers that were on this module. So there's 1 or 2 that was recorded by myself as well. So please give me feedback, because if they do help you, I want to make more of these videos and add them for you on my modules. Okay, so the objective of this session for me is to explain the basic principles of business combination and the consolidation process, to give you examples and exam technique. I'm not going to focus too much on exam technique exactly today. In the later classes, I will focus more on it, but through some of the things that I will explain, I will cover that as well. Then to show you how to get easy marks in a question. Again, not in too much detail today, but later on the later examples in the slides, I will just show you, if you just understand the basic principles and actually just the information that we give you and read properly what we ask and then use that information, then you'll see actually how easy it is to just use some of the information given to you. And that's the easy marks I'm referring to. Then how to approach your studies or your way forward. And I think I already said that, and that's now part of the 7 steps. And included in that is, you're listening to this class now, you need to make your hands dirty through the study material provided, and you need to do questions. The questions for me is the most important thing, because that's where you test yourself to see if you understand the principles or not. Then I'm going to explain the type of questions that you will normally receive in the examination or in assignment 2, because already, as I said, assignment 1 is only multiple choice questions. And then emphasis how important a good year mark is. I think I already said that. So the better your year mark, obviously it's a good start, and it's a good start for you to understand the principles. And then if there's any repeat students on this module, please do something different, okay? Because sometimes we get emails from students saying, but I'm struggling with this. It's now the 3rd time or whatever that I've done this module, but then it's the first time I hear from you as a student. So please, if you're a repeat student, do something different or contact me and I can help you with a plan so that we make sure you pass this module. All right. As I said to you, I'm not going to go through anything, so I'm not going to read this for now. You can go and read this in your own time. Just want to see quickly. I already said that. Okay. Just point number 5, the type of questions that you will normally get in a examination is discussion type of questions, and then you need to apply the information given in the question to what was asked. It doesn't help you, you just write the theory down. Okay, so apply the information given. We can ask you calculations. To be honest with you, that it's not a lot that happens. So most of the times, maybe for, let's call it between 8 and 12 points or marks, we will ask you to calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase or non-controlling interest. And you'll see later on, I'll focus a little bit on that, because I think that's a very important principle to understand in this module. And there's a lot of students who don't understand it, and they count quite a number of marks. We can also ask you journals, multiple choice questions. So there will be multiple choice questions in the exam as well, but only between 4 and 8 max. And then financial statements and notes. Okay. But you'll see that later as well. Okay. So learning unit 1, business combinations. Okay. So the type of investments that you get is a subsidiary. If you look at the top, the top headings, subsidiary, associate, joint arrangement, and the simple share investment. Okay. So for today, we're only going to look at a subsidiary, and the key word there is control. So luckily, we make it very easy for you in the exam. Okay. In most of the cases that I can remember of, we will tell you A Limited bought the following number of shares from B Limited and gain control through that. Okay. So the key word is control. Okay. It doesn't have to be necessarily more than 50% shares. And you'll see in the following slides what control also means. So control has these 3 elements. Okay. You have control over an entity if you have power over the investee. Okay. And those 3 things is an indication when you will have power. Okay. The second one is exposure or rights to variable returns from its involvement with the investee. And then the third one, the ability to use its power over the investee to affect the amount of the investor's return. So that's now a mouthful. As I said to you, you need to learn this, but normally in the exam, we will tell you they've gained control. Okay. We might in a small, in a multiple choice question, maybe give you this information. So you need to know it. And we also might ask you a small discussion question. So you need to know this. Okay. But for now, that's all I'm going to say. Okay. How is decisions made in a company? So that's now things that's indicating to you if there's control or not. So it's directors meeting, for example, and annual general meetings. And obviously, if I have 40% of the shares in your company, but I can control your general meeting, your annual general meeting, or your directors meeting, then I have control. Okay, so just bear in mind of that, and then go and look at these examples in your own time. There's examples to clearly explain to you how this control thing is applied, especially in a discussion question. And then if you have any trouble with it, you can contact me. So I'm just going to slowly go through these slides. Okay, so there, just as I said earlier, the type of formats in a discussion question, we can ask you to write an email, write a memo, or write a report. When we ask it in that format, we give marks for those type of things, for the email format or the memo format. Okay, in this case, we just ask, discuss whether MAC Limited has control over Kyber as from 1 September, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and there at the right-hand bottom, you can see it's 8 marks. Okay, so a small, simple thing with this information given, I'm not going to go back to it now, 8 marks. Okay, and then in this one, no specific format was required. We just said discuss. I could have said send an email for the CFO or for the auditor or for whoever, and then obviously for that email format, you also get marks. Okay, so this is now the theory of this question. So you'll write down the theory, and then you'll go and make it practical. So again, I've highlighted some of the things for you in here that walks hand in hand. You can have a look at this in your own time. I'm not skipping this because it's not important. I think I've clearly, with my colors and everything, showed the stuff here so that you can do this in your own time. Okay, so if we can just go further here, because of the annual general meeting, you'll see here that blue, 1 September 2010, there was a number of shares purchased. Okay, and then they only had 15% votes, not a majority. So at this point, no control. And then from 1 September, also 45% no control. That's what I've tried to do here. And then the same with the directors meeting. You can go and do this in your own time. Okay. All right. So now we go to business combinations. Okay, we now have things that I said at the beginning that I think is important, and that's now a little bit of, let's call it calculations, mathematics, and then the principle. So you can look at this slide, and you'll see the middle one. Let's start at the left bottom. Measuring assets, liabilities, and NCI. Recognize goodwill or gain and bargain purchase, and that specific one is a very important one because it always appears in the exam, either as a calculation or as part of something that needs to be disclosed. So you need to understand goodwill, you need to understand gain on bargain purchase, and you need to understand there on the left-hand side, the NCI, the non-controlling interest. Okay? So what is a business combination? A business combination is a transaction or event in which the acquirer obtains control of one or more business. Okay? And then the business combinations are accounted for using the acquisition method. That's just a little bit of theory. Okay? So you can look at the information here also in your own time. Okay, so this is just a small example. Let me just go here. This was again a discussion question. You can go and do this in your own time. Okay, all these discussion questions. Okay, you can go and read this in your own time. How you identify acquirer. I think that's quite straightforward. Determining the acquisition date, straightforward. We will normally give it to you to say A Limited purchased the number of shares in B Limited at the following date. Recognize and measure the assets and liabilities. Okay, so this is an important one. In this one, you need to calculate, to use the fair value of the company that you're going to acquire shares from. Okay, and then I'm not going to even read this. You can go and do that in your own time as well. Deferred tax, always remember that whenever you have a transaction and you need to calculate the fair value. You buy shares in another company, and in that company, there's a difference between the fair value and the carrying amounts. You're going to adjust the amount to the fair value, but you're going to take the tax into consideration as well. Okay, so there's the example. So on 31st December 2019, Hamburger Limited acquired 100% of the share capital of Salad Limited in a business combination transaction. Control was obtained. So can you see there we give it to you. Control was obtained. So you don't have to do anything smart. As defined in IFRS 10 consolidated financial statement, the following is a list of identifiable assets and liabilities on this date. Assume an income tax rate of 28%. And I've highlighted that specifically because you all know now the current company tax rate is 27%, but you will check what we give you in the exam. If we in the exam tell you the company tax rate is 28%, that is what you will use. But we will not do it, but I'm just saying. So this is an old slide of mine, so I haven't changed the details here because the principle stays the same. Okay? So now if you look at for example, the first line, manufacturing machinery, you'll see the carrying amount is 800,000 Rand, but the fair value is 1 million Rand. Okay? And that just means when we're going to acquire this shares in the company, remember we said earlier when we do this, we need to measure this net assets and liabilities at their fair values. That means this is the values that you're going to use. And when I stopped you there at this little man, what I said, remember tax, this just means whenever you do this adjustment, you need to account for the tax as well. So obviously, if there's going to be an increase from carrying amount to fair value, like in the manufacturing machinery example, the first line, okay, you will have the tax effect on that as well, the deferred tax effect. And that will obviously decrease that change that you've just used to increase the value. I hope that makes sense to you. Okay, so look there at the bottom, calculate the fair value of the net assets of Salad Limited acquired by Hamburger in terms of IFRS 3. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. So this is all the fair values. Okay, so it's given to you in this given information. So we use the fair value column. Okay. But then we know the deferred tax there at the bottom, the internally brand, that was also I think given. The deferred tax is the important one for me here. So then you need to go and calculate the deferred tax. Okay. So the deferred tax, there you can see on the right hand side. So for each one of these items that was given, where there's a difference between the fair value and the carrying amount, you will take that difference and then you will multiply it by the tax rate to get the deferred tax. So as I said to you earlier, so obviously you've got a increase in the fair value of the asset. So that was a debit because your asset increased. So then the deferred tax on this one will be a credit. That's the 65,000 Rand there on the top right hand side. And you'll see we've multiplied it by 28%. Why only 28%? Because this is a machine that is depreciated. When we work with a machine that's depreciated, we do not use the capital gains tax rate. Okay? Look at the second one, land from 250 to 850. Okay, so there was a 600,000 increase. But look at the tax rate there, that's 22.4%. All that is your 28%, which is the tax rate, but for capital gains purposes, the inclusion rate for companies is 80%. So you'll just say 28% multiply by 80%, and that's the 22.4% that you will use. Again, the land increased, so the asset increased, it was a debit, so your deferred tax on this will be a credit, but with the capital gains inclusion tax rate. Okay. So then you will go like this through all of your net assets and liabilities that was adjusted to their fair values. You will take on the right hand side the deferred tax total and you will deduct that. Because why do we deduct it there? Because the net effect is a liability, and if you just look there on top, you've added all your assets with their fair value amounts. But obviously, there's a tax consequence as well. So you just take the tax consequence into account here. Okay. So what is my net asset value? So the net asset value in this entity is 2,172,000 Rand and 560. Okay. So just one thing you'll see later on that when we provide most of the information in a question, we normally use the share capital and retained earnings, and you'll see that in the analysis of owner's equity all over as well. That's just the other side that you can use, okay? Because remember, your equity is your assets less your liabilities. So to get to the net asset value, what we've used here is the assets less the liabilities, okay? In some of the other questions, we use the equity itself, okay? It will give you the same answer. It's just a shorter method. Okay. What is NCI? NCI, non-controlling interest. Just as an example, if the subsidiary own 100,000 ordinary shares and I as a parent buy 80,000 of these shares, the non-controlling interest is just the other shareholders. Okay. That sounds now easy, but there's calculations and disclosure that you will have to do that I will show later on that is very important. So NCI, goodwill, fair value of assets, very important. Okay. When you recognized any non-controlling interest, there's two methods that you can use to measure it. Okay. It's the proportionate share of the acquiree's identifiable net assets or the fair value method. Okay. And when you use the fair value method, you'll see in the analysis of owner's equities, there's a portion added to goodwill. So you can there just look at examples on page 27 to 29. Okay. All right. Example. Okay. So this is now actually the first example with calculations of something that I said to you is going to be very important in the exam. The NCI and the goodwill always count a lot of marks. On 1 March, H Limited acquired control. Again, we said to you, control over S by acquiring 214,500 of the 330,000 issued shares. I'm just going to stop there quickly. So in this example, we give you the number of shares that was purchased. You need to go and calculate the percentage as an example. Okay, you need to go and say, okay, 214,500 divided by 330. This is my percentage share that I'm going to use in some of my calculations. Okay. In other cases, we give you the percentage. In some instances, you need to calculate it. On this date, the fair value of the net assets was 833,920. Again, in this example, we gave you the net asset value. In others, you need to calculate it. Then we say the market value of one S Limited share was R2.60. Okay, so we give you the market value or the fair value of this shares. So look at required. We're going to do A first. Okay, when you see A, determine the NCI, or even if we just say disclose the following information, blah, 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 you will have to know what is the accounting policy of this entity. Okay, if we look at question A, the accounting policy is they will calculate NCI and measure it at their proportionate share. So just look at the yellow. If you see that, if you see proportionate share, two things you need to remember. One, you're going to ignore that market value, that R2.60 given in the information. Okay? And the second thing is you will know if you do an analysis of owner's equity, or if not, you will know your goodwill, your NCI does not share in your goodwill. Okay? So whether you need to calculate NCI or whether it will be disclosed, you just know there's not a portion of the goodwill to be allocated to that NCI amount. Okay, so let's look at this. So the total shares given was 330. The shares held by H was 214. That was given. So the shares held by the NCI was 115,500. Okay, so that's how yeah, at the left-hand side, where we calculate the number of shares, and then we know, okay, but the percentage shares of the NCI shareholders is 35%. That's 115,500 divided by 330,000. Or we could have said to you, H Limited bought 65% of the shares in S Limited. Then you know, okay, if the parent bought 65%, obviously the remaining 35% belong to these other shareholders, okay, which we refer to as the non-controlling shareholders. Okay. Then we say, okay, but what is the value of this non-controlling interest if we make use of the proportionate share measurement method? Then you say the net asset value of S Limited was 833,920, in this case given. In other questions, like in that example earlier, you need to go and calculate it, and then you just multiply it by the percentage. And there you've got your value of NCI. Okay? That's now at acquisition. Okay? And you'll see later on where we're going to use it. You're going to either, we can ask it as a calculation, or you will have to use it in calculating goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. Okay? So the next one, the fair value one. So when you see fair value, the fair value method, that is now, if I can go back, part B, required B, the fair value method, then you know, okay, I'm going to use that market value or fair value per share given, the 260, and I know when I'm going to calculate NCI later and there is goodwill, I know the NCI is going to take a share of this goodwill. Okay, they're going to share in the goodwill. So just remember that. Okay, so now we already know the NCI shareholders own 115,500 shares, and we know it's measured at the fair value or the market value, and it was given to you as R2.60. So now you know in this case the value of your non-controlling interest is 300,300. And that's the difference between the two. Okay? Measure the consideration transfer. That's now when A Limited buys shares in B Limited. They can either pay cash or they can give assets or whatever the case may be. You can go and study this in your own time. There's a few examples here. I don't think it's too important for this session. It is important, but not for this session. Okay? Okay. Recognize and measure goodwill or a gain from bargain purchase. This is the, together with NCI that I said earlier, is something that you need to calculate, and that it's always counting a lot of marks. So what is goodwill? It's an asset representing the payment made by the acquirer for future economic benefits arising from other assets in a business that are not capable of being individually identified, blah, blah, blah. In my own simple words, what is goodwill? I buy shares in B Limited or in you, okay? If I pay 100 Rand for the shares and the value of your net assets that I'm buying, let's say there's no non-controlling interest, I buy all 100% of your shares. If I pay 100 Rand for it, but it's only 80 Rand worth, then it means I pay more. I'm surely not going to pay more for nothing. And then I think there's some type of asset sitting there that's going to give me benefits in future. So if I pay more than the value of the assets, that difference is the goodwill, okay? Which we will recognize as an asset. Okay, I hope it makes sense. Okay, you can go and read this in your own time. Okay, how is goodwill or a gain on bargain purchase calculated? It's consideration transferred. In other words, I pay 100 Rand for your shares, or I give you a vehicle worth 100 Rand for your shares, plus the NCI at acquisition. That's the NCI we've calculated earlier. And when you see that, you must remember, okay, there's two methods. Either the proportionate share method or the fair value method. Okay? You add those two together and you deduct that. You then deduct your fair value of the net assets acquired. Remember, we've done that earlier as well in that calculation where we did the deferred tax calculation. So the difference between the consideration plus the non-controlling interest added together, less fair value of your assets, give you your goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. In other words, if you pay 100 and the NCI was 10 Rand, so it's 110 Rand, and the value of the net assets was 80 Rand, you know you have a 30 Rand goodwill because you paid more. There's a hidden asset sitting in there. If you've paid less, if you've only paid 50 Rand for something that's worth 80 Rand, then you got a bargain. Okay? Then it's a gain on bargain purchase, what we refer to. And that bargain or that gain, you will recognize in your statement of profit or loss. When it's goodwill, remember I told you it's like a hidden asset. You paid more for something that you can't see, then that asset will be disclosed in the statement of financial position. Okay, so if you just, I actually talked now for already 40 minutes, but if you just understand this that I've given to you, and that you understand that Learning Unit 1 is about an entity that will buy shares in another entity and control it. We're looking at subsidiaries now. Okay, and the key word there was control. If it's controlled, then you're going to do this calculation and you will use a lot of these things and disclose later in your financial statements, because you will have to disclose the goodwill, or if it was a gain on bargain purchase, you will have to disclose the NCI, but you'll see that later on. Okay. Important points on goodwill: you will always disclose it as a non-current asset in your statement of financial position. Make a note of it. You test it yearly for impairment. Impairment losses will be as other expenses in the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income in the year of the impairment. Okay? And impairment losses will never to be reversed in future. If you can just remember these 4 bullet points. Oh, there's a fifth one. Obviously, the goodwill in the statement of financial position will be your goodwill calculated less any impairment losses. Gain on bargain purchase. I already said to you, you will disclose it under other income in the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income in the year of acquisition. Thereafter, it's part of retained earnings. And it must make sense to you. If I buy shares in your company in the current year, let's say my financial year was 1 January 2025 to 31st December 2025. If I buy those shares in your company in the current year, okay, then I made the gain and I got a gain on bargain purchase, okay? I paid you 80 Rand, but you gave me assets worth of 100 Rand. That 20 Rand gain on bargain purchase was a gain in the current year. So in my statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, I will recognize under other income that 20 Rand in the current year. But now, when we do consolidations, then now if we go to the next financial year, it must not in the same year. So you can't put it in the current year in your statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. And therefore, it will be part of your opening retained earnings in your statement of changes in equity. Okay? Or if you, we never ask it that way, but if you maybe work at an accounting firm or at a place where you need to prepare financial statements, you'll always present your current financial year figures and your prior year figures. And then obviously if it happened in the prior year, so in 2026, you will recognize that in your comparative figures, your prior year figures, which was then 2025. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's just look at this example. I'm not going to read through everything because you can go and read this in your own time. There's just a few things that I will, this one I want to do. So on 1 January 2016, the issued share capital of T Limited was 100,000 shares with a market value of 12 Rand. On this date, S Limited acquired 70% of the interest. So obviously in this one is easy. 70% of 100,000 is 70,000, but we also gave it in both cases. Twin Limited, they bought this in Twin Limited at a cost of 1 million Rand. And the fair value of the net assets amounted to 1.1 million. Non-controlling interest is recognized at fair value. Okay, now you must remember, at fair value, then you're going to use that market value. So how do we calculate goodwill or gain on bargain purchase? You first look at what was the consideration transferred, okay? Plus the non-controlling interest. So consideration transferred, the 1 million Rand that was given to you, okay, look there at the bottom, cost of 1 million in red. And then the non-controlling interest is 100,000 shares. That's the total shares of this company. But the non-controlling, the other people own 30% of it because we bought 70, they own 30, the remaining. Okay, so it's 100,000 multiplied by 30%, multiplied by 12 Rand, which is the fair value or the market value of these shares. And that's 360,000. Less your net assets acquired, that was given to you in the question, 1.1, and there you go. It is goodwill. So if it's bigger than 0, it's goodwill. Remember, because your cost plus NCI is 1,360,000. That's more than the 1.1 that you bought. So that means it is there's a hidden asset there that they actually are giving you, and we refer to that as goodwill, and you're going to disclose it in your statement of financial position. This is now just the other method. You can go and look at this in your own time. So they will see just the non-controlling interest that's calculated differently. And there's your answer. You can go through all these examples in your own time. That's just examples to show you how to get to the answer. In this example, it's a comprehensive example, an old exam question or part of an old exam question. I just want you to see the following. The machinery in this case had a carrying amount of 45,000 and a fair value of 77,000, and all the other items in this case was exactly the same. Okay, so that's the example that we did earlier as well, or a similar example. So you can do this in your own time. I've done it step by step so that you can see what was done here. I just want to go forward to this one. No, sorry, it's not this one. The next one. Okay. So again, I stopped you at the fair value, and I said, remember the tax. So the machinery had a difference between the fair value. If you look at the second line there, machinery, the fair value 77,000, the carrying amount 45,000. So there was a difference of 32,000. That's an increase in the net assets. And because it's an increase in the net assets, there's a deferred tax liability that you need to take into account. Okay. So that basically just reduces this increase a little bit. And why is that? Because this machinery, the extra amount, you're gonna be taxed on that increase over the period of time. And that's why we also use the normal tax rate, because it's a depreciable asset. Okay, so the fair value was given. You use that fair value given. Your deferred tax was calculated. Remember, if we use the fair value columns, the 32,000 is already included there. So we're just going to take this deferred tax and deduct it there. And there's the fair value of the identifiable net assets acquired. Okay, so there we go. You can go and do this in your own time. Go through this slides in your own time. IFRS 3 disclosure example. Okay. This one is just the accounting policies. To be honest with you, I don't think this is just, you need to know it. We will not ask you the accounting policies in the exam, or at least not while I'm there, while I'm the lecturer and I'm preparing the exam papers. But you need to know it, because if you prepare financial statements, you need to do it. I'm going to go through this. And then this is a disclosure note of goodwill. If you look at previous exam papers, you'll see we also do not normally ask the specific note on goodwill. Just another note, business combinations, blah, blah, blah. You can go through this in your own time, and you can go through this in your own time, and through this in your own time. Okay. So the things that will be in the financial statements at a later example, I will show you there where the goodwill is sitting, or where the gain on bargain purchase is sitting. So a summary of Learning Unit 1 is, what is a group of companies? So obviously a group of companies is where there's more than one entity involved. That's where, for example, A Limited buys shares in B Limited, and we say there's control. That's obviously a group company. Understand what control means. Remember I said to you, so it does not necessarily mean you need to buy more than 50% of the shares. The control is the important thing. But normally in the exam, in a disclosure question, we will tell you there is control. We will make it very clear that you can see it is a subsidiary or not. Okay, in a discussion question, might be something different, but I said to you, you need to go and learn those three things. That's the definition of control, and just look at that example, and if you can do that and just apply that, you'll be fine. Account for non-controlling interest, I think we've covered that. So remember the non-controlling interest, there's two measurement methods, the proportionate share and the fair value method. And then how you account for consideration at acquisition. I haven't dealt too much of it because we really do not make that difficult in the exams. But still, go through the information in the slides and make sure you understand if it was not a cash consideration with an amount given, but maybe cash plus a little bit of a few assets that you know how to use that as well. Okay? And then account for the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. And that's how easy as it is. Okay, so that's for me what you need to know of Learning Unit 1. So now I'm just going to take a sip of water here, and you can stretch your legs quickly if you want to as well. Okay, so let's go to Learning Unit 2, consolidation after the date of acquisition. So that was now on the date of acquisition. You realize there's control, so it's obviously a parent and a subsidiary, and then you need to know, okay, there's, let's call it 2 or 3 things. I need to know what the consideration is. I need to calculate non-controlling interest, and fair value of the assets, and then goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. Okay, I'm not going to go through that again. So points 1 of 3 of my objective of the previous page is to identify the entities in the group and to identify what is required. So for me, the required is the goal. Okay, that's where you need to get to. Okay, and then to obviously read properly what was given to you in a question, and then to apply the principles to convert the information given into what is required. Okay, this is the following steps that I want you to follow when you have a question for group companies. Okay, so you will combine the financial statements. Sorry, that's now where there's a parent and a subsidiary. Okay, so just look there at the top right hand side. JVs and associates is different, and that will be covered in Learning Unit 4 and 5. And for now, I just want you to make sure you understand a parent and a subsidiary first, because the majority of marks will come from there, or the basic principles if you understand it, and then you'll see later on when we cover associates and JVs, it's actually, there's some of the things that's the principles that's the same, but there's a different way how we account for it. Okay, so if it's a parent and a subsidiary, you will always combine the financial statements of the parent and subsidiary on a line-by-line basis. In other words, you add everything together. In other words, if I tell you A purchased shares in B and got control through that, whether it's 60% or 80%, and I give you the cash and cash equivalents as an example of 100 Rand for entity A and 50 Rand for entity B, you will add that 100 Rand plus 50 Rand to the statement of financial position of the consolidated statements. So listen carefully, you'll add line by line for the statement of financial position and the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. For those two, you will add them line by line 100%. And you'll see later on, I think it's towards the end of one of these slides, or maybe in the following class, where I will show you if you just add them, how you really score easy marks, because that's given to you. It's just to put them together, to identify it's a parent and a subsidiary, and to add them together. Then you'll eliminate the carrying amount of the parent's investment in each subsidiary if there's more than one, and the parent's portion of equity in each subsidiary. That's the first pro forma journal, and I hope you've seen it before in your study material. And you must ask yourself why. So why will I take that out? Because remember, if I bought 80% of the shares in your company, okay, and I bring in my entity, I have that investment, let's say, as 100,000 Rand. I can't add that 100,000 Rand and add all your assets and liabilities to the group statements. Okay, because then obviously, if I don't take something out, there will be excess items in our combined consolidated statements. I was struggling now a little bit with the English word that I want to give you. I just had it in Afrikaans, so sorry. Okay, so let me repeat again. So I buy the shares in your company. I said, let's call it a statement of financial position. I will add 100% of my line items, 100% of your line items. But then there's something I need to do. We refer to that as a pro forma journal. That, in my books, investment in your company, I need to take it out. Your share capital, I need to take that out. And that's the things that you need to take out. And then obviously, that gain on bargain purchase or goodwill that we've just discussed that was covered in Learning Unit 1, that is something that we will then add as an extra item. Okay? That's point 3. We calculate and recognize the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, and you must ask yourself why. Remember, this is now a group company, so it's my books and your books. I've added everything together, but now part of mine was the investment. Okay, I take that out. That's the first pro forma journal, but then I've calculated a goodwill, and I need to obviously add that here as well. Okay, and then I calculate and recognize non-controlling interest. Why? Okay, so that's the same thing. Why do we have this non-controlling interest line item? Okay, if I've added 100% of your items, okay, and 100% of my items, that must not in effect really correct, let's call it a net asset value for this company or this group as a whole, because something belongs to other people, what we refer to, or other companies, what we refer to, non-controlling shareholders. So because we've added 100% of my info and 100% of your info, but I only owns 80% of the info, of your net assets, that means that remaining 20%, I've added it, but I'm going to have a separate line item at the bottom in my equity that I will call non-controlling interest. And that is just basically to rectify that, let's call it in inverted brackets, the incorrect way of added the 100% of your entity. I hope it makes sense. Okay, if not, if you do not understand what I try to say here, please contact me afterwards. Send me an email and I'll try and explain that a little bit better. Okay, and then the fifth one, you eliminate any intra-group transactions. Okay, so just a simple one. If I bought shares in your company, but I made use of your transport vehicle and you charged me transport cost, that's just an example. It's going to be income in your books and an expense in my books. But for us as a group, can you see that there was no real transport cost if we just look at that specific transaction? And there was no real transport sales for the group if we just look at that transaction. Let's say you charged me 20 Rand. That specific 20 Rand, we should now eliminate, okay? Because remember I said earlier, we added 100% of my items, so 100%. So that 20 Rand transport cost would be as part of my operating expenses, but we're going to take it out now. And part of your sales or your other income, wherever it was in your individual statements, it was added to the group statements, but we say, no. For a group as a whole, that 20 Rand is not real revenue or not real expenses. We're going to take that out. And that's the reason why we eliminate intragroup transactions. That's now a simple intragroup transactions. You'll get intercompany sale of inventory and property, plant and equipment where there's unrealized profit sitting in closing inventory and unrealized profit sitting in property, plant and equipment. And it might be depreciable or non-depreciable assets. just check carefully. There's examples on that as well. Okay. Consolidation process, that's just the subsidiary, the parent, we group everything together and we do this adjustments, the pro forma journals, and then you get your consolidated financial statements. Okay. Okay. First example was a wholly owned company. So that means I bought 100% of your shares. Okay. So this is the information given. Assets, blah, 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 blah. Prepare the consolidated statement of financial position of the J Limited Group as at 31st December. So this is obviously now in simple terms, but this is what it's going to look like in the exam. Okay, we're going to give you a sentence and then we're going to give you two trial balances. In this case, it's now just a few assets, but it's going to be the full trial balances, for example. We're going to give a few other information and then we say, prepare the consolidated statement of financial position or whatever, the statement of changes in equity. Okay. What did I say earlier? You take it and you just add 100% of both these entities. Okay. And if you just look at that, you need to understand that you need to know this layout or framework out of your head, because if you don't know this, you'll not be able to answer this in the exam. So just to give you a little bit of guidance, just for you to have the group name, the reference that it's a group. So not just Johnny Limited, but Johnny Limited Group, and that you indicated to me this is the consolidated statement of financial position, and to give me the correct date. Just for example, for that, we already give you marks. Okay. Then on the left-hand side, you've got all the information that was given to you. Okay, so you've added that now. This is now a little bit of a long route, because you'll see now in the next slides, I'm going to do something else. But this is now the long route. So you've added everything here. Okay. But then you eliminate the carrying amount of the investment and the parent's portion of the equity in each subsidiary. Okay. Remember I said to you earlier that investment, we can't have that in the books no more, because we as a group does not have an investment in this company. It was only in my individual companies. Okay, so we'll do this and we'll take out the share capital, which is your share capital. We'll take out the retained earnings. And remember what I said earlier, the share capital and the retained earnings is the same as the net assets. It's just a shorter version. Okay, and the investment was 27,000 Rand. That was given here. If you look there, investment in Bravo Limited, 27,000 Rand. If you just look there under the asset, the second line. Okay, so, and in this case, if the calculation was done, you'll see it's a gain on bargain purchase of 3,000 Rand. Okay. In this one, I say no non-controlling interests are recorded because this is a wholly owned company. So if this company owned 80% of the shares, there would have been a line item non-controlling interest as well. There's examples later on, and just make sure you understand it. So now you can see here. So can you see there at the non-current assets investment in Bravo Limited, I brought in the 27,000, but because of this pro forma journal, I take out the 27,000 because I say, but for us as a company, there's no, or not as a company, as a group, there is not really an investment in Bravo. So we take it out there. Okay. In this case, it was a gain on bargain purchase. If there was goodwill, you would have brought in a line item there, goodwill, and whatever the amount was. So that's some of the things that's now, let's call it not given, because this property, plant and equipment was given in the TB. You just brought it over to the statement of financial position. But then you must remember about things like the goodwill or non-controlling interest, or whatever the case may be. Or if it was associates or joint ventures, you will have line items there, investment in joint venture, investment in associate, and so forth. Okay. So if you look at the red, we took out the 27,000. Share capital, 50,000, which was the parent, plus 10,000, which was the subsidiary, but then we take out the subsidiary's 10,000. And that's because of that pro forma journal that we are doing, because we've calculated based on that the goodwill or gain on bargain purchase. Okay, that's now the long route. So the short route is you should remember that when you do consolidated financial statements, the share capital, you only need to bring in the parent's portion. So if you only brought in share capital 50,000 without that other calculation of plus 10 less 10, you would have scored full marks for that as well. So this is just to explain to you what's happening here. Okay? Retained earnings, 40,000, which was mine or the parents. Sorry, if I'm referring to me and you, I'm the parent, you're the subsidiary, this in just examples. So my retained earnings plus your retained earnings, then we deducted 20,000, which was yours, and look at the 3,000 now. The 3,000 is the gain on bargain purchase. Remember, it went through the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, and obviously everything that's going through there will be part of your retained earnings. If I can explain it differently, that's why I said to you earlier, if the acquisition took place in the current year, if you prepare the next year's financial statements, if we were now in 2026 and I ask you prepare 2026 financial statements, that 3,000 will be part of your retained earnings. That's why you put it there. Okay? Right, trade and other payables, just my portion and your portion. And remember, right at the beginning of the class, I said, it's really, if you understand the basic principles, easy to pass this module. Okay? So let's say you did not even calculate this gain on bargain purchase. Okay? And you just did all these other things. You would have, I think, already passed this module almost. Okay? Obviously, as I said, the non-controlling interest, the gain on bargain purchase, those things counts a little bit more marks. So just make sure you understand at least the basics of it, because if you can get some of those items right, and just remember, okay, if it's goodwill, I need to add it there at the non-current assets, or if it was a gain on bargain purchase, whatever I have, I need to add it here at retained earnings. Obviously, you will score marks. Okay, example 2. I'm not going to go in too much detail here. You can just see here, there's non-controlling interest because not 100% was purchased. And there, if you look at the red highlighted, blue elected to measure blah, blah, blah. It's fair value at the date of the directors, at the date the directors of Blue Limited were of the opinion that the non-controlling interest was worth 3,000 more than their proportionate share of the fair value. Okay, so this is just, and the reason why I highlighted, this is just things that we sometimes put in questions that's a little bit different. Okay, so you do the normal process, but then you remember, okay, but in the information given, they said it's worth 3,000 more. So obviously I need to go and add this 3,000 somewhere else. Okay, I just want to go one step back. Okay, at the right hand side, the blue cloud, the investment was 40,000 of the 50,000 shares. And where do I see this here? If you look at the heading assets in the little table, you get property, plant and equipment. Just below that, investment in Blue Limited, 40,000 shares. Okay, so now I know 40,000 shares was purchased. I go down to the share capital. I see, okay, they have 50,000 shares if I look in the blue column. So obviously, if I purchased 40,000 of the 50,000 shares, I know it's 80%. I know there will be non-controlling interest. Okay. So again, you go and add everything together, and I just want to go back one step. Okay, don't worry. So you will add all these things, and then you look at the non-controlling interest there at the bottom. So that's what I said. If you don't purchase 100% of the shares, then you always need to remember you will have a non-controlling interest line there in the equity portion as well. If I can just stop there as well, this whole equity section here, okay, the 130, if you can look at the right hand side, the 130,000, the 25,000, and the 120,000. So let me just repeat, the 130, the 25, and the 20, okay? That total, each of those line items totals comes directly from the statement of changes in equity. So always make sure that you understand that, because I think some students miss that as well. Okay, to come back, non-controlling interest, why will there be such a line in your statement of financial position? Or if we've prepared the statement of profit and loss there as well, or the statement of change in equity there as well is because it's not a wholly owned company. Okay, so we only purchase 80% shares, so 20% belong to someone else. So because we brought in for each line item, property, plant and equipment, trade and other receivables, 100% of me and 100% of you, but I only own 80%, I will have to bring in a line item there. Okay? So there's the calculation of your non-controlling interest. So you will check what method are they using here. Are they using the proportionate share method or the fair value method? And then I've highlighted the 3,000 here again. We said it was 3,000 Rand more than this, whatever the calculation was. Okay? So remember, if in an exam, for example, you've missed this, but you've just done the calculation, 50 plus 7 plus 8 multiplied by the percentage, you would have still scored, let's say that NCI 16,000 counted, in this case 1, 2, 3, 4, let's just say 5 marks. You will still receive 4 of the 5 marks. Okay, so there you can see, in red I've highlighted for you, after we've added now everything, what it is that we need to take out. So just to clarify that as well, remember this investment in Bull, because we're going to take it out, you don't need to disclose this in your financial statements. Okay, this is just for explanatory purposes. Okay, share capital I've explained, the revaluation surplus, you will see that that's again just 2 items added together. I've highlighted it red in the previous one because this is now something that was not given it's not given in all the questions. So just look out for the funny things given. And then retained earnings there at the bottom, the 8,000 Rand was to eliminate you as a subsidiary, your retained earnings. And then in this case, there was a 1,000 Rand gain on bargain purchase. So you would have added that there. Then the non-controlling interest, obviously it was 0 plus the 16,000 that we've just calculated. And normally in an exam, it's not a given, but we will then, for example, because this was not given in your trial balance, we will even for the line item non-controlling interest, in other words, for the words, we will even give you a mark there because that was not something given. Okay? The same as goodwill if goodwill was there on top. So let me stop there. I want you to learn these, let's call it skeletons out of your head. What should a statement of financial position look like? Okay? The heading, the assets consisting out of the non-current and current, the equity and liabilities consisting out of the equity and then the non-current and current liabilities. Then you say, okay, this is the basics, but what's the things that will normally be added in consolidations? It's either goodwill, non-controlling interest, and those type of things. Okay? So we add 100% of both and then do the, let's call it the elimination journals and the consolidation journals. And that's how easy it is. But remember, you don't have to show, for example, at share capital. You will remember at share capital only be the parent's portion, so it's 80,000. Okay. This is now another example. So in this example, just to show you, we can give you the information of questions in different formats. In this and most of the questions, we will, for example, give you the 2 trial balances, or if there's more than 2 companies in the group, we will give you the trial balances of the companies. We can show it like this, debits on top, credits at the bottom. We can even show it combined, okay? And you need to know, okay, which are the debits and which ones are the credits, or we will show the credits in brackets and so forth. And we can even give you parts of financial statements. In other words, where we already took this trial balances, already prepared a portion or a section of the financial statements, and then you need to either work back with the information. And that's why I say you need to understand the principles, because if you understand the principles, then anything is possible. Okay, you can go and read this in your own time. I will stop if there's something that I want to show you. For example, here in this specific question, we ask you for the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, the statement of changes in equity, and the statement of financial position. So that's basically the 3 type of financial statements that we normally ask. And normally, our exam questions, which is 100 marks, at least 2 of these will be in the exam, okay? And some of the cases we even ask all 3. Depend on how many discussion questions we ask, and depending on if we ask journals or not. So make sure you know the skeletons of these 3 statements out of your head. Okay, so drop the skeleton. Again, I said earlier, if you just write this down, Fred Limited Group, and I can see, okay, you know it's for the group. You've got the company name right, and you refer to it as a group, and then consolidated, blah, 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 and the correct date. Then obviously you will get your mark for that as well. Okay? Some students in the past started their statement of profit or loss with the profit before tax. Please don't do that. I think there's in the somewhere in the study guide maybe an example where we started like that, but that's because of the information given in that small example. Okay, so please make sure you understand the following as well. I think that's the important thing to say is in the study guide, tutorial letter 501, there's certain things where we only give you limited information. So obviously we only, when we prepare the answer for that specific example, it's only a small principle we want to carry over to you or show or explain to you. And then you will not see the full picture. Okay? So you look at the comprehensive examples at the end of the learning units or questions in tutorial letter 102 and 103 to get the full pictures. Okay? So the same, exactly the same as with the statement of financial position, you will add line by line the information of the parent and the subsidiary. Okay? And I don't want to confuse you now, but you will not do that with an associate or a joint venture. I will deal with that in Learning Unit 4 and Learning Unit 5 over the next couple of weeks. But please remember it, make a note. Only parent and subsidiaries, you will add 100%. And again, can you look at the bottom? Okay, you will have the bold line item saying total comprehensive income for the year, 1,352,876. That is basically where it stops, where you've added everything line by line, 100%. And as with the statement of financial position, you'll see later that there will be a few things that we add or deduct or change there. But then below that, that profit line, okay, that bold line, you'll then split that between the owners of the parent and the non-controlling interest. So again, that's where your non-controlling interest is going to come in. The statement of profit and loss, the P&L part, okay, is going to come in here. So all you do here is the total comprehensive income, the 1,352,000, will basically be split into 2 parts. The portion for the owners and the non-controlling interest. If I may say it otherwise, okay, let's say I purchased 80% of the shares in you, okay, and our profit in total, mine was 50 and yours was 50, okay, and that total comprehensive income for the year, the total is then 100 Rand, okay. Can you see that that 100 Rand does not belong to us as a group? Because 50, which was my 50, belongs to us, but 20% of the 50 of your profits belongs to someone else, and that will be that non-controlling interest part there. Okay? So remember, it's 20% of your 50, not 20% of the 100, because that's another mistake students make. They take this non-controlling interest, they will take this 1,350,000, blah, 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 and they will multiply it by 20%. That's incorrect, because that other shareholders, they don't own anything in my company. My company is my stuff. And 80% of yours, but we've added 100% on top. Then we say, okay, now we've got the 100 Rand here. Okay, now we need to take out the non-controlling interest part of your profit. So 20% of your profit. Remember, the 20% is now because I've bought 80% of the shares. If I've bought 70% of the shares, it will be 30% of your portion. Okay. Sorry, I'm repeating this the whole time because I know this is where students make mistakes. Right. Let's go to the next line. Okay. This is now, if I can just go back to the information given, Fred Limited acquired control over Daphne, if you look at line 1. Okay. So this is the statement of profit or loss of Daphne Limited. Because I want to go and work out now, in this case, what is the NCI portion of your profit. In this case, you are Daphne. Okay, and in this case, it looks like there was a loss. Okay, and even if there was a loss, you will bring that loss in there as well. But now you must think carefully. If your portion is a loss, then obviously the NCI shareholders, they only have access to a loss, to a negative sign. So then just remember to put it in brackets as negative. Okay. One other thing. Okay, sorry. Then the owners of the parent, that will be the balancing figure. So obviously the 1.3 million. Normally, if that will be a positive, the NCI, you will just deduct it and you will get to the answer. But in this case, because it's a loss, it's the opposite sign. You will have to increase the parent's portion. So obviously the parent's portion is more. Okay. So 1.4 million less the 55, let's call it loss, gives you the 1,352,000. So look at non-controlling interest. I said the exam, please reference. Okay. So what students do, they have this non-controlling interest. They've got an amount in there, because remember, you can see now it's not an easy amount, and the bigger the question gets, the bigger this calculation gets. So then we as markers don't want to go and find and see where have you done this calculation. Was it in the analysis of owner's equity, or was it in another place? So please refer properly to your calculations. As an example, you will write here non-controlling interest, and then in brackets you will write C1 or A1 or Calc 1 or A, or whatever the case may be. Make sure you reference it properly so that we can follow. And even if it's in an analysis of owner's equity, you will write C1, which is the reference to the analysis itself. Then, for example, C1 and a small a. And then I will go to C1. I'll see, okay, there's your analysis of owner's equity, but there's a lot of amounts in. And then I'll see, okay, but there's A. And then I can follow your calculation. I hope that makes sense. Okay, the statement of changes in equity. So this is the only one where you will not add 100% of the subsidiary and the parent. Okay, so you will have, you can go through this in your own time. You will have, remember what I said earlier, in the share capital column, you will have your 100%, your 100% of the parent, and then in the retained earnings column, you will have 100% of the parent plus the percentage that you own in the subsidiary. And then next to that, you will have the non-controlling interest. So if you can just think about it, so basically this retained earnings plus the non-controlling interest column added together will be your total. Okay? So can you see my calculations there? For example, share capital 1.5 million. Okay? The same with the dividends, the 120,000. That's another one. Share capital and dividends will always only be the information of the parent. Okay? Look at my retained earnings opening balance, C2. So I've referenced it there for the marker. C2, now the marker can go to C2 and see, okay, there's my calculation. So C2 consists out of Daphne, which is the sub, and there's all the information multiplied by 75%, because I only, in this example, own 75% of the subsidiary, and then the parent, 100%. You put in 100%, and there's your total opening retained earnings. This profit amount, the 1.4 million, you can either go and calculate it, or if you can just go back, if you look at the 1,408,000 and the 55,628 in brackets, if we just go back here, it's exactly those amounts from the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. So, in your consolidated statement of changes in equity, the profit for the year line item, those two amounts comes directly from your statement of statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income. So obviously, if you've already prepared that statement, we've asked that, for example, in question 1, and in question 2, we asked this. No need to go and calculate this again. Just put that amounts in and refer me to question 1. Okay? And that's a principle you need to understand and know. So we just go further. The same with non-controlling interest. There's your calculations. If you just look at it there, so it's C3. Share capital, retained earnings, blah, blah, blah. Then I said NCI at. That's the 268,750 Rand. That's the same as the calculations that we've done in Learning Unit 1 at the beginning of this section. So that's the non-controlling interest at acquisition. But then since acquisition, up until the beginning of the current year, some things happened as well. And I need to take that into account. And that's the lines that you see there. The retained earnings on 1 January, less the retained earnings at acquisition. So obviously that difference was my movement. And I need to account for that movement as well. So in other words, you need to draw a timeline for yourself in front of you to say, okay, at acquisition was at this point. Let's call it point A. We're busy preparing now the financial statements at point C. Okay, but what happened between point A and point C? Obviously, they might have, time might have gone there as well. I need to account for that information as well. Okay. Okay, the same here, the balances here at the bottom. The 1.5, 1.8, 273, the red ones. So the totals, if you've done your statement of changes in equity, will be exactly the same as in your statement of financial position. So if we ask both, immediately go and transfer the amounts, because then you'll score easy marks. Oh, sorry. Okay. Let me just go back. One thing that I want to see here. You can go and read these notes in your own time. Okay, statement of financial position. I think we've covered enough of the statement of financial position. Just one thing, if you look at the red, you'll see in this case, there was goodwill. Okay, so you can go and do the calculation in your own time. So you will always, when you have consolidation, calculate whether there's goodwill or gain on bargain purchase, and then account for whatever it is wherever you need to. If it was goodwill, you'll put it in here. If it was a gain on bargain purchase, you'll put it there. Okay, in the retained earnings part, either in the statement of profit or loss, if that was asked, or if only the statement of financial position was asked, then you know it should affect your retained earnings. Can you see in my goodwill here, I did not refer you to Calc C1 or whatever the case may be. I've put the calculation next to the item disclosed. That's also a possibility. So you can, if there's enough space, don't cramp it in so that we can't read properly. If there's not too much amounts that needs to go in there, you can put the calculations next to the line item. That makes it obviously easier for you and for us. Okay? But if it's a big calculation, for example, non-controlling interest in the statement of profit or loss, like my previous example, if I can just go back. For example, this one, reference example C1, to calculate the 55,000. That's one back as well, sorry. There it is. So this is obviously now that calculation. That's too big to go and try and put in the statement of profit or loss. Then you can go and do it on a separate page and then just reference properly. Okay. Okay, intercompany transactions. I think I gave you an example earlier of something easy. I purchase shares in your company and for some reason I need to transport something and you are in the transport business, and then I make use of your transport vehicle and you charge me for it. So it's income in your books and it's expense in my books, and we need to eliminate it. That's now something easy. I'm not going to go into detail in these. I've got nice examples of transactions here. I'm going to stop at a few things. I want you to please go through these examples and then make sure you understand it. If not, I think if you understand the examples that I've got here between parents and subsidiaries, you should be fine. Okay, if you struggle, you let me know. Just here on the left-hand side, okay, so let's start at the top. Bank loans, etc. I gave an example of transport costs. It can be a loan, it can be any type of transaction between you and me. On the right-hand side, inventory. Okay, that's inventory, and PPE at the bottom is the ones that we mostly ask. That's when inventory is sold from one entity in the group to another, and then some of those inventory is still at hand at year end. Then there's an intergroup profit that we need to take out, and that's the same with PPE. And just always remember to account for the tax effect as well. Okay, so with these examples, you can just look at the top right. I said the parent sell inventory to sub. Okay, I want you to go through these transactions because later on you'll see in the joint ventures and the associates, there's intergroup transactions there as well. And the journals there looks a little bit different. So I want you to look at this, go through all these examples and make sure you understand it. In short, just this one as an example, inventory was sold between the two companies, okay? Look at the journals at the bottom. We will debit revenue and credit cost of sales. That is on the total sales amount. You can go and read it in your own time, the information given. Why do we do that specific journal? That is because we added 100% of my information and 100% of your information, we need to, for a group, make the individual lines correct. That's why we do that first journal. The second journal, cost of sales and inventory, that is just, I sold inventory to you, okay? Let's call it worth 200 Rand. I'm not going to give the amounts of this example. At year end, let's say at year end, you've sold 150 Rand of that inventory. In other words, 3/4 of it you've sold. Then there's still 50 Rand of inventory that you bought from me sitting in your books, which I've just added to the consolidated statements. But then we say, no, whoa, for us as a group, there's a profit that I've made on that 50 Rand sitting in your books that we need to take out. And then we calculate that profit. That's the 300,000 multiplied by whatever ratio is given in the question. In this question, we used a profit of 25 on the cost. Okay, and then you need to take it out. And I'm going to stop there. In the previous journal, I said you take the total sales amount to do that portion of the journal. For the second portion, to take out the unrealized profit, what we refer to, you take the closing inventory. In other words, the inventory that you bought from me that was not yet sold to external third parties. You take that balance and we work out what the profit is on that specific amount and we take that out. Why cost of sales and why inventory? Cost of sales because closing inventory is part of your cost of sales calculation, because cost of sales is your opening cost of sales plus purchases less closing costs. I'm going to repeat this. Cost of sales is your opening inventory plus your purchases less your closing inventory. So that's why we affect cost of sales. And then we're going to, the other amount is inventory in the statement of financial position, because in your books, there was inventory of 50 Rand, but inside there for us as a group, the real cost wasn't 50 Rand because I made a profit on it. Okay, so we're just going to take that small portion profit out because we've added 100% of it. But now we say, okay, but it's wrong. For us as a group, there's a small portion profit in there that I made, which we should take out now. And then the bottom one is just the tax effect. Remember I said, always remember the tax effect. It's just the tax effect of that profit that I've made. Remember in my books, I made a profit when I sold it to you and I've paid tax on it. For us as a group, We change that now. Okay. This is just, if I can go back again, the journals in the current year, the year we are selling it, and then just take note of the green. So in the year to follow, obviously those things will affect your retained earnings and no longer, some of the other items. So just take note of these journal entries and make sure you make sure you understand in what year they incurred and what the effects will be in the years to follow. But I think my slides explain it properly. So just look at my slides. Look at the top right again. In this one, the parent sell a non-depreciable asset to a sub. So if you see non-depreciable, the thing that you need to know is there will not be any depreciation adjustment. So if you can see here, the journal effects is other income. So because I sold as a parent a asset to you, but I made a profit on it, I recognize that profit in other income. For us as a group, we take out that profit part in the other income. And also you bought the asset from me. So the asset is now part of your property, plant and equipment, but it's with an excess amount because the profit that I've made is included in your cost price. So we take that out here. And again, then the tax effect. Okay. Parent sell a depreciable asset. So again, same thing. Your journal will be other income and the credit, property, plant and equipment, and then the tax effect. But then there is something else. Because it's a depreciable asset, we need to account for the depreciation. Okay, so again, depreciation was too high in your books because of this overvalued asset. So we're going to decrease the depreciation. So look at this example, and then you, if you do not understand, you let me know. Just another way of explaining this depreciation thing as well is we call it this depreciation, because you're not selling this asset, but it's depreciable. A part of that profit that I've made will realize over the remaining useful life. Okay, and that's why you'll see we credit depreciation. In other words, your expenses for us as a group will be lower, and if it's lower, the profit will be more. That means a part of that 5,000 Rand profit that I've made at the beginning, which we've just in this journal decreased the gross profit. Because of this depreciation journal, we basically bring a part of it back. Okay? Okay, so no need to be scared if you know the basics and you know the principles. Sorry, just one step back. All these examples here is when the parent sell to the subsidiary. In the study material, please go and look to the other side as well when the subsidiary sells to the parent. Okay? And it's going to be the same for what do you call it, for associates and joint ventures. They actually differ a bit more. I'm not going to go through this slide. Later in one of the other classes, I'll go through this again. How to approach a question. You will read the required to see what is it that is given, what do we ask, and what is the date or period. Remember what I said to you, you need to draw a timeline, because if you don't know what period we are working with and when the dates of the transactions took place, if you don't plot that on a timeline, you can make mistakes. Read the question and identify the group structure. In other words, in the exam now, is it a parent and a subsidiary, or a parent and a associate, or is it a parent and two subsidiaries, or a parent, subsidiary and joint venture? So just make sure in the exam you read that properly, identify the subsidiaries, blah, blah, blah. We've said that. And then identify the intergroup transactions and mark which entities are affected. Okay, so that you can do these transactions that I've just showed to you. Okay, then you go to read the required section again. So now you've read, you know what it is where you need to get to. You've read the information in the question, then you just read again so that you make sure you have the correct date and the correct whatever it is that we ask. Do we ask discussion? Do we ask for journals? Do we ask for the presentation of financial statements? And then you make sure when your financial year end is point 4, make use of a timeline. Prepare your answer book by starting with the layout or skeleton, as I said earlier. But don't give information that's not required. So if we ask for the statement of financial position, don't show us the statement of profit or loss, obviously. Okay? So that's why it's important to read what you need to do, and then fill in the given amounts in the skeleton. That's the things that I showed you earlier, the 100% plus 100% in the statement of financial position and statement of profit or loss, and then you start working with the other information. Okay? And then you read the information again to do the calculations or adjustments. That's now the pro forma journal plus the intergroup transactions and all of that. Okay? And then you use your calculation or analysis to complete your skeleton. And I think I said earlier, make sure you reference properly. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, there's not too much time left. So I'm going to scan through this. You will go through these slides in your own time. And if I see something that I want to put emphasis on, I'll do that. This is just where the entity that you acquired in made a loss. So there's a loss instead of a profit. So just go and look at this example to see what difference it is. In this specific question, I gave you the additional information, and then I've highlighted in each one, for example, in point 1, what you need to see as important. And then later on, for each one of these items, I did the calculations or whatever it is that you need to do with it. So please go through this in your own time, because really I think if you can do, and I'm not saying you need to only study this, because this is obviously just an example, but if you understand this and you grasp the basic principles in what I've explained today, and for example in a question like this, you can do any of the questions. Okay, so in this one the required was, look at what I've highlighted. I've highlighted the specific statement and I've highlighted the dates. Okay. Just want to see something else here. Just look at part C. I said prepare only the retained earnings and NCI column. Remember, in the previous example, there was a share capital column as well in the one example that I went through, where I said only the share capital of the parent should be there. So this is now something when I said read the required properly. So prepare only the retained earnings and NCI columns. Okay, you can go and read. This is just explanations. Just want to see if there's something here. You can see I've highlighted things that stood out in the specific sentences that you need to understand. Okay. One thing, look at point number 8. Okay. On 31st December, the goodwill was tested for impairment. Remember I said earlier, one of the things at goodwill that you need to remember is you need to annually test it for impairment. Okay. So in this question, we gave to you the amount to say the goodwill was impaired with 2,750 Rand. So we can either say it was impaired with a specific amount, or we can say it was impaired to a specific amount, and just make sure you can do the difference there. Okay. There's my specific transaction, and I show you here that this one was selling to the other one, and there's my journal entries. In this case, look at the bottom. I said only if the subsidiary sells a PP or inventory, then the intercompany transaction impact on the analysis or the NCI. Okay, so remember my previous journals was just where the parent sold. So just make sure where the subsidiary sell that you understand it's having impact on NCI. Okay, nothing here. You can do this in your own time. Just want to see something. It's not here. What was that one again? Okay, so that's the depreciation effect. So if you just looked at the other expenses, that was now because of the intercompany sale, but the journals will show it to you. Okay, the depreciation was credited with 3125, and that's why you deducted it there from other expenses. But you can, and the 875 was just the income tax effect on that. So you can go and look at all of these and make sure you understand it. I've put that little cloud. I said always ask yourself why. So for example, in that specific question, if you the specific part, if you saw the 3125, don't just tell yourself, oh, it's depreciation. Ask yourself, why have I deducted it here? And then the tax, why have I added it here at the tax? Okay, because it must make sense to you. If it makes sense, you'll understand, you'll remember, and it will be easy in the assignments and examination. There's the other expenses now. So the 2,750, remember it was said the impairment, the goodwill was impaired with 2,750. So that impairment in your statement of profit or loss will be a expense. So you will add it here, and in the statement of financial position, you will deduct it from goodwill. Okay? Remember to bring in the NCI part here. You can do this in your own time. Now we go to the statement of financial position. There again, point number 7, it's the proportional share. That's the way in this question the non-controlling interest was measured. But you can go and do that in your own time. There you will see goodwill, 2,750 Rand. You put it there immediately because you know you will deduct it from your goodwill. Okay, that's why it's in brackets. Because in the question it said goodwill will be impaired by this. So you start with your skeleton and already bring in that 2,750. And then you do all the other transactions, and wherever it's affecting your statement of financial position, for example, in this case, the 25,000 is affecting your property, plant and equipment. The same with the 3125 accumulated depreciation. You bring it in on your statement of financial position. So you'll have your property, plant and equipment line item. The black is your given amounts of the two different TVs, less the 25,000 plus 3125, which was now the intercompany profit on the sale between the two entities in the group. Okay, so goodwill was tested for impairment. I think we've already covered that. There's your journal, debit goodwill impairment, credit goodwill. So the one is in your statement of profit or loss. That's now the debit one. And then credit goodwill, that is your statement of financial position. And there it is. Okay, so in this case, just to go back, because I didn't say that, and on one sense, maybe a little bit of a stupid example, but goodwill was calculated as 2,750 in this question. That has nothing to do with the other 2,750 impairment given. So this was calculated, and then obviously if we go to the statement of financial position, that's 2,750 calculated less the 2,750 impairment. Okay, I haven't put my reference here to my calculation, so just remember, put it as C1, A1, calc, whatever. Just want to see something here. Nothing here. I think I already explained this. This comes directly from your statement of profit or loss. You'll see I've made all these comments so you can follow this clearly in your own time. Dividends paid, I said that earlier, it's the same as share capital. This is only the dividends paid amount that was paid by the parent. Okay, so the others would have been eliminated. Okay, and then on the non-controlling interest part, there will be an amount there as well. Okay, the long-term loan was just the intercompany transaction. You can do that in your own time. This specific one was now a bit complex, the way we gave it in here. So if you do not understand this long-term loan one here, I don't think you need to stress too much. Okay. And I think that's almost it. Let me just see if there was something else. This is just, again, the NC opening balance that you will calculate. to put in your statement of changes in equity. So just if you can look at it on this side, né? So the non-controlling interest as an example in your statement of changes in equity, okay, will count a lot of marks, because this NCI at acquisition, the one, not at acquisition, at the beginning of the current year, you will have to calculate, because that will consist of the at acquisition part and everything after that. So that will count a lot of marks. And then if we did not ask the statement of profit or loss and other comprehensive income, and you couldn't transfer this 55,000 from there to here, that will also be a calculation counting a lot of marks. Okay, that's it. Analysis of owner's equity. You'll see this is really important, ladies and gentlemen. In the study material, we make use a lot of times of the analysis of owner's equity, and in some of the other study material. Please remember, that's not a requirement. That's just a way to explain to you how to get some of the amounts, like the non-controlling interest at acquisition, or the goodwill, or the current year non-controlling interest if you need that in the statement of profit or loss. So that's just a different way that you can use to do calculations of amounts that you will need in several places. So some students only do the analysis of owner's equity, and then they think they've earned a lot of marks. If you only do the analysis of owner's equity, and we ask for the statement of financial position or statement of profit or loss, or whatever the case may be, and you did not use those amounts in the statements required, you'll get 0. Okay? No mark. Because you did not answer what was asked. Okay? We did not ask to provide for us an analysis of owner's equity. Yes, if we ask that, which I don't think we'll ever do, then it's a different story, because then you answer what was required. Okay? So in my second line, it's just a method or a calculation for you to assist you to get to some of the amounts that you need to disclose. You can make use of an analysis, journals, separate calculation, doesn't matter. At the bottom, look at the last bullet, just reference properly from the disclosed to the analysis or any other calculation. So if you've used an analysis and you transferred some of those amounts to wherever you've disclosed the information that was required, please reference properly. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all from my side. I hope you've learned something from the session. I would appreciate if you can give feedback in the comment section, or if you can email me afterwards to the course email address fac3704@unisa.ac.za. I would really appreciate any feedback. Then please remember over the weekend to do your assignment, just to put emphasis on that as well. The assignment, you will only have 2 attempts. Once you've started with your first attempt, you don't have to do both. Obviously, if you've done 1 attempt and you're happy, that's fine. Once you've started with your attempt, the time's going to start ticking. You've got 3 hours to complete the assignment, and it's going to consist out of, as I said in the announcements, of 20 multiple choice questions. I don't think it's difficult. 1 or 2 might keep you busy for a while, but I really think this is the one where you need to score. You've got 3 hours, which is more than sufficient, but make use of the 3 hours. And all of the best of your studies. And I hope to hear from some of you throughout through the emails in the next couple of days. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all from my side. I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thanks for the hand there. I appreciate it. Have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.